All right, Mr. Mayor, you're good to go.
Thank you very much. With that, good evening, everybody. This is the City Council meeting for the City of Burlingame, November 21st, 2022. We're calling the meeting to order right at 7 o'clock. And with that, we will move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I've asked our Police Chief, Mr. Mike Matucci, to lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. And with that, Madam City Clerk, if we could have the roll call.
Councilmember O'Brien.
Here.
Councilmember Beach.
Here.
Councilmember Coulson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Here.
Here. Mayor Ortiz.
Here. Thank you. With that, we will move on to report out from our closed session. I'll pass it on to our City Attorney, Mr. Michael Medina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the closed session agenda regarding item 4A, we do have some reportable action. The city has entered into 8 settlement agreements for claims arising out of the Washington Park tree incident. We have entered into settlements with the following persons for the following amounts. Wilson Chun, $35,000, Douglas Hua, $72,500, Oliver Wong, $95,000, Vicky Lee and Justin Cito, a combined settlement of $525,000, Kelly Zen, $750,000, and Miss Zen's 2 minor children, total of $10,000. Regarding item 4B, there is no reportable action, and that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guina. Thank you for you and your team for all the hard work on this item, and we are very pleased to put this behind us. Thank you for that. We are moving on to upcoming events. I want to remind everybody that Friday, December 2nd at 5 p.m., we have our holiday tree lighting ceremony, and it is one of the most wonderful events in the city of Burlingame, so I invite everybody to join us in front of City Hall. Also, from the library, the library will be hosting an in-person docent lecture, Ramses the Great and the Gold of the Pharaohs, Tuesday, November 29th at 6 p.m. in the Lane Room. This talk will explore Ramses' life and discuss the marvelous treasures in this exhibition, from the pharaoh's colossal royal sculpture to mummies and exquisite Egyptian jewelry. The exhibit will be at the D. Young Museum from August 20th, 22 to February 12th, 23. Then we also have the Library Homework Center. It's on holiday break and will return on Tuesday, the 17th. So with that, colleagues, does anybody have any upcoming events they would like to share? And having none, then we will move on to presentations. Just give me just a second. I have to bring up this the proclamation. Now, I did have it here. Megan, you sent me out today, correct?
Correct. Do you want me to resend it to you right now?
No, I got it right here. Thank you. So with that, we are doing a proclamation recognizing November 13th through November 19th as United Against Hate Week. Whereas the United Against Hate Week, which has started by the mayor of Berkeley in 2017, is a call for 7 days of local civic action by people in every Bay Area community to stop the hate and the implicit biases that are a threat to the safety and civility of our neighborhoods, towns, and cities. And whereas the Constitution of the United States confers equality on all individuals, regardless of race, gender, orientation, religion, or political beliefs, and whereas the City of Burlingame City Council stands against anti-Semitism, racism, bullying, anti-inclusion, and discrimination in all forms and wherever it may be. And whereas the City of Burlingame reaffirms the city's commitment to being a welcoming, inclusive, tolerant, and safe community where hate has no place and where our strength is our diversity. And whereas over the past years, the city has participated in United Against Hate Week with activities including special presentations, development of a flyer that listed contact information for helpful organizations and resources, and a very successful community-wide potluck and candlelight vigil at the library. And whereas this year's planned activities, including anti-bias story time, a viewing of the movie Just Mercy for students, and wishing trees that will be planted in Burlingame and continue to grow, reminding us of our commitment to remain united against hate. And whereas the city of Burlingame joins other communities across the state in recognizing United Against Hate Week as an important step in bridging divisions as well as strengthening our communities. Now, therefore, I, Ricardo Ortiz, Mayor of the City of Burlingame, do hereby recognize November 13th through November 19th as United Against Hate Week. Thank you for that. And colleagues, does anybody have any comments that, let's see, do I see any hands? If I do, no, I don't see any hands. So with that, thank you for that. I think that is a powerful statement all on its own. So thank you very much. And we will move on to our public comments on non-agenda. So this is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda. And with that, I'll pass it to our city clerk. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comment?
Yes, the first hand up we have is Stephanie Lee. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. For this week of Thanksgiving, I wanted to give thanks to those who are rarely thanked, and that's City Council and city staff. I have wanted to express this for years, but since I was either applying to be on a commission or on a commission, I risked the appearance of trying to gain your favor. I am not applying or reapplying for any commissions now, so I can thank you without suspicion. On a daily basis, when I walk around Burlingame, I feel grateful to live in such a well-run city. The new community center is just spectacular. The parks are beautifully maintained and updated by Margaret Glomsted's team. I've seen Victoria Park's playground go from an empty sandbox to a magnet for happy children. Brad McCulley's team makes the library a haven. And City Council and Kevin Gardner's team have made tough decisions and worked diligently to have housing built near transit hubs with more on its way. The old post office is in the process of becoming a city center. Downtown is vibrant and humming with energy. I watched council meetings pre-COVID and saw how you set aside a reserve during the good times in anticipation of the bad times. Now, no one could have guessed that the bad times would come so quickly and harshly, but your preparation meant city services continued despite the large drop in tax revenue. In many council meetings, you're given controversial issues that will upset someone no matter what you decide. I've watched each of you carefully consider the facts and residents' input, and I appreciate the many ways you gather residents' input. We feel well heard. Even in the rare instance when I have disagreed with a vote, I respected that you made a carefully considered decision grounded in principles. I stopped watching council meetings a few years ago, and I'm not going to stay for this one because I trust your judgment to do what is best for the city, and I have other things on my plate to tackle. This is the city council that has been in place since I moved here. So for this week of Thanksgiving, I give my thanks to City Council, to Ann O'Brien in particular since she is leaving, and to Lisa Goldman and her team for making Burlingame a great place to live. Thank you and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Not often do we get kudos on our public comments, so truly appreciate it. Thank you for that, for those words. That was very, very nice to hear. Thanks. Do we have any other public comment?
Yes, our next up is Gerard Manning.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. First off, I totally second the comments of your first speaker. You all provide really inspiring leadership. For me, particularly in the area of climate change, your approval of the REACH codes is just one of many, I think, that are helping us tackle, the biggest problem of our era. I wanted to alert you to a substantial new threat to the climate goals of both Burlingame and all of California, which is the California Public Utilities Commission. They recently revised their proposal for how residents with rooftop solar can connect with the grid. and they will vote on this on December 15th. If passed, it will have a drastic impact on rooftop solar. It will allow utilities to charge a fee of 75% or more of all of the excess energy that we share with our neighbors. And it'll make it economically unfeasible for almost all Burlingamers to add solar panels by almost doubling the time it would take to recoup their investment. Several studies have shown that this is the case. And in fact, 2 California districts that messed with net metering before saw almost 90% drop in installations. So this really matters for Burlingame. Our climate action plan relies on a tripling of residential solar. And we already have the early adopters, the people with cash, but it gets harder as we want to get more. My own example, I installed solar on my roof, but it's shaded and it's oriented kind of wrong. So it'll take me 12 years to get payback. Under CPUC new rules, it would take me 20 years. Now, I consider myself, a bit of a climate activist, or at least caring about the climate, but I can't afford 20 years of a payback. I wouldn't be able to do that. We do need more rooftop solar in Burlingame. We simply do not have the time to get huge farms and transmission lines out in the desert sorted out, and we need it for resiliency when the power goes out. Not only that, but if the CPUC imposes these fees, you can bet your bottom dollar that the very next day, every utility in the country will be trying to do the same thing in their state. And so we may end up with Burlingame residents paying the price in terms of global warming from this happening nationwide. So my ask of you is to speak out on behalf of your citizens and request to the CPUC and to Governor Newsom that they reject this extreme solar fee and come up with something that's a bit more equitable, that doesn't sacrifice global climate in order to defend utility profits. Several cities have passed resolutions already, and I've sent a model language to your sustainability coordinator in case that would help. But anything you can do to show that this is not a good idea, we'd be most grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Thank you for sharing that information. That's wonderful.
And with that, I don't see any other hands up, and I don't have any emails.
Very good.
Oh, wait, sorry, I spoke too soon. There's one more hand up.
Very good.
Bruce Nagel, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, that's great. I want to echo the concerns that were raised by the last person speaking. NAM 3.0 is really bad. I mean, the comments that he made in regards to the fact that we need solar in order to manage getting to the right level of renewable energy is very clear. And there are challenges, the way he described it. There are oftentimes exemptions that have to be given for roofs that are of special shapes that don't lend them easily to laws. I mean, in Mountain View, where I live, there was there are laws and ordinances that would state that to have solar on every house and have a certain percentage, but it doesn't work. So the last thing we need to do is to come with more restrictions and get even less of the solar that's out there. So I strongly support the previous person, and I think a lot of other jurisdictions around the city, around the area here would support that as well, because we need solar. We need to get it in effective, and there are other ways to handle it. One of the things that one of the people in our group has come up with is to try to address the thing by making the amount of money that's available, that is for the the connection fee, scale at the rate of the amount of juice that the person has signed up for. So if they went from 100 amp panel to a 200 amp panel, they'd have twice the cost of the connection fee, which it seems like it's equitable. Anyway, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak and thank the gentleman previously who well stated all the arguments. And I think there are a lot of other organizations around the county who would definitely want to support your concerns about doing something about NEM 3.0 to make it equitable, which it is not now. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
All right, and with that, we have no more public comments.
Very good. Okay, thank you for all the people who showed up to comment, and especially Ms. Lee. Thank you again. And with that, we'll move on to the approval of the consent calendar. I have been asked by staff to pull item 8D for a small correction. And with that, colleagues, anybody, Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to briefly pull items 8F and 8I.
F and 8I, okay. Colleagues, anybody else? Councilmember O'Brien,
And I like to pull 8C.
8C. Okay. Do we have any others? Oh, Councilmember Beach,
Was, if I didn't miss it, 8E?
8E. Oh, man, we're pulling out just about every item here. Let's see, okay. And with that, any others?
Yes.
Ooh, I don't see any raised hands, so we can open it to members of the public. Anybody, member of the public wishing to pull an item off the consent agenda?
Mayor Ortiz, yes, I received an item or an email with a comment on item 8B.
8B. Okay, so this is a short motion here. We're looking for a motion to approve items 8A, G, H, and J.
So moved.
Second,
I have a motion by Vice Mayor Brownrigg, a second by Councilmember O'Brien. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember O'Brien,
yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Colson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes. And with that, we will move on to item 8B, which is the approval of city council meetings for the minutes of November 7th for the regular meeting. And I believe there's a member of the public who wished to have this one pulled.
Yes, I just got an email from Benito and he says, as you know, there were regrettably incorrect information presented during discussion item 10D at the last council meeting. It is difficult to disagree with how council voted to support the two applications, given the presentation and the circumstances. Similarly, it's hard to fault our diligent TSPC commissioners who apparently wrote letters of support for these two projects over others, because they too were told all the projects were prioritized by the bike ped plan. I do hope all this is accurately reflected in the minutes. I appreciate you, Mr. Mayor, for confirming that this was presented to TSPC and open for public comment. That both projects ended up being recommended for funding shows that they are indeed good projects, but it is also true that there were other potential locations with the same caliber or perhaps better that are in the plan in front of schools that had an open public process and have documented collision history, which would have likewise been awarded. The reality is there will always be more projects than there are taxpayer dollars. So to have a prioritized list is a good thing, because every dollar spent has the opportunity cost of not being available for other projects. It's also worth noting the potential legal issue here. If a pedestrian is killed or seriously injured at one of the higher priority locations, and during discovery, it is revealed that the city chose to fund a project that is much lower on the list, or in the case of South Rollins, not even on the list or even mentioned in the bike ped plan, then the city is exposed. In the end, they are tough decisions, so it is imperative that this council gets the most accurate, objective, big picture, and inclusive information possible. Hopefully this happens next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Velasco. And then colleagues, does anybody have any comments or any questions on the meeting minutes? And having none, were there any other members of the public that wish to comment on this item?
No, I don't have any emails or hands raised.
Having none, then I'll bring it back to colleagues for final comments or for a motion to approve item 8B.
I can make a motion to approve item 8B.
Second,
Okay. I have a motion from Councilmember Colson, a second for Councilmember Beach. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
yes.
Councilmember Colson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes, thank you. And with that, we'll move on to item number 8C, which is the adoption of an ordinance amending chapter 1830 of the Burlingame Municipal Code to adopt local amendments to the 2022 California Green Building Standards Code, CEQA determination exempt pursuant to state CEQA guidelines, sections 15378, 15061B3. Now, do we want to do a presentation on this one, or do we just want to do comments from the Vice Mayor? Councilmember
was-
Dunn.
It was
I'm
actually
sorry.
me that pulled it off, Mayor.
Oh, I'm
Ortiz.
sorry. Yeah.
And I just want to make a comment before the vote. That's all.
Okay, please go ahead then.
So my comment is kind of similar to previous comments that I've made. I went along with this last meeting just because I wanted it to move forward for the council to vote on. But I will say that, I'm in favor of most of the REACH codes, but I still would have liked to see the inclusion of the exception for gas stoves and the gas fireplaces. So I just wanted that on record before the vote.
Very good.
you.
Colleagues, anybody else have any comments on this item? And having none, then we'll open it to members of the public who have a comment on this item.
I don't have any emails and I don't see any hands raised, so.
Very good. So I will bring it back to colleagues. I think if anybody has a final comment, otherwise we can entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve item 8C.
Second.
I have a motion for Councilmember Beach, a second by Vice Mayor Brownrigg. Could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember O'Brien?
No.
Councilmember Beach?
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg?
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz?
Yes. And with that, we will move on to item number 8D, and I believe this is the one that staff had asked us to pull, Mr. Mertuzza. So I will pass it on to you for a presentation and for you to tell us what the discrepancy was.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. This is essentially a approval of a vesting tentative map for 1669 Old Bayshore Highway, 1669 and 1699 Old Bayshore Highway. In the staff report on page 2, last paragraph pertaining to CEQA, and also similarly the last paragraph in the resolution, there is a incorrect number pertaining to CEQA guideline. The corrected number should read as 15061, not 15, not as shown in the staff report. And all other references are correct and remain unchanged.
Very good. With that, colleagues, any questions for our Director of Public Works? Having none, then we will open it to members of the public who may have a question or a comment on this item.
I don't have any emails and I don't see any hands raised.
So now I bring it back to colleagues, and I guess we are, the motion needs to include that it is as amended by the director just now. So I will entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and make the motion. Adoption of a resolution approving the vesting tentative map per item D with the revised numeric data that Director Mertuzza submitted in.
Thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Coulson, a second by Councilmember O'Brien. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember O'Brien?
Yes.
Councilmember Beach?
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg?
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz?
Yes. And then with that, we will move to item number 8E, which is adoption of a resolution approving a water supply assessment for a private development project located at 620 Airport Boulevard. And I don't recall who pulled this one, but Councilmember Beach. So would you like us to do a whole presentation, or you want to just make a comment on it? And
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I have a comment and a question, but it was really, I pulled it because I learned something interesting at a presentation recently. I thought it was worth flagging for colleagues as well. So I was recently at Sustainable San Mateo County. A major biotech life sciences firm was giving a presentation. And in that presentation, I learned, in the context is this is for a R&D facility, life sciences. I learned that in biotech, life sciences typically uses 10 times the amount of energy of a regular office development, and they use typically about 4 times the amount of water. I found that really interesting and compelling, but I think it does flag the importance of doing as many sustainable things in our building code and making sure that all new development, particularly in life sciences, is really cutting edge, looking at the environment. So I just wanted to check in with staff to make sure that those numbers sort of jived with the approval supply assessment that in fact, if this is a R&D assessment, were they estimating more water usage than is typical for office space, and if those numbers kind of synced up? So that's just a question for Director Matuza.
Go ahead,
Mayor
Director.
and City Council. Yes, the answer is with regards to the water supply. The typical R&D facility uses 3.3 times as much water as a regular office development, and that is the estimate that is included in the assessment of the water needs for this project that is before you tonight for the water assessment, water supply assessment. And staff has taken that into consideration, and the net increase in supply demand that is shown is as a result of that demand. And with regards to the overall energy needs, I do not know the answer as to how many times R&D facility is required. Takes more energy resources than compared to the office development.
Thank you. I guess the water is the context tonight, but thank you so much for verifying that. I have no other questions, and after public comment, I'm happy to make the motion to approve, but back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Beach. And colleagues, anybody else have a question? Councilmember O'Brien.
Not necessarily a question, but a comment to our director. I do appreciate that we are now looking at the assessments when developments make, a certain criteria that we have to do these studies, because it still does concern me when we have multiple dry years. We can't make it without significant reductions. So I do think we as a city need to pay close attention to these assessments, but at least we're getting these assessments. I think that's definitely in the positive, direction, so we can just continually evaluate when we're getting these, bigger developments coming in on where we stand, with our water supply. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Brien. Any other comments before we open it to the public? With that, then we will open it to public comment on this item.
I have no emails and I don't see any hands up.
Very good. Then I will bring it back to colleagues. Any final comments, or can we make a motion?
No final comments, Mr. Mayor. I make a motion to approve item 8E.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Beach and a second by Vice Mayor Brownrigg. Let's have roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes, thank you with that. Then we move on to item number 8F, which is adoption of a resolution authorizing a clean water state revolving fund loan application for the wastewater treatment facility digester improvements project, city project number 86580, and authorizing the city manager to execute associated agreements. Colleagues, I don't recall who pulled this one, so.
This was me, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Thank you very much, and I'll be brief. This is a very important upgrade to the water treatment plant. Some of that equipment is almost or over 80 years old, and it's been on our plans for a while. I also, for the members of the public who might be listening, delighted to read that we'll be able to tap into state funds that allow an interest rate that is appreciably below market. Nevertheless, I wondered for Director Matuza, this is a $30 million project, assuming we get the funding from the state. Do we anticipate having to raise rates, Mr. Matuza, to cover this capital expense?
Mr. Vice Mayor, thank you for asking that a great question. The answer is no. As you may recall, a few years ago, just a couple of years ago, the City Council approved the sewer rate increases, and those rates were based on the city's master plan for wastewater treatment plant and collection system. And in that plan, this project was assumed, and debt service or loan repayment amounts were also programmed as part of the water rate. So therefore, there is no rate adjustments required, just merely for the purpose of this project. Staff will periodically reviews the rates and bring any anomalies for council's consideration. And that happens every few years, and we will keep you updated.
Thank you, Mr. Director. This is great work. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you. I think that was a very important question. I appreciate that. So with that, we will open it to members of the public, unless colleagues have other questions. I don't see any raised hands. So Madam City Clerk, if we could open it to members of the public.
Yeah, I have no emails and I don't see any hands up, so you're good to go.
Very good. So I'll bring it back to colleagues. Anybody have any final comments, or does somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve item 8F, Mr. Mayor.
And I'll second Mr. Mayor and thank staff for using this revolving fund. I know that was an important part of San Mateo, how they helped cobble together their funds for their wastewater treatment plan. Is just another component of the puzzle. It's great to see us using these resources. I'll second.
Very good. We have a motion by Vice Mayor Brownrigg, a second by Council Member Beach. If we could have a roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes, and with that, we will move on to item 8I, which is adoption of a resolution to amend the city purchasing and contracting procedures. And again, I don't recall who pulled that one.
All right, this was again me, Mr. Mayor. So I had a question, and then when we come to future agenda items, I'm going to suggest that we bring back the question of how we do our purchasing and contracting for a conversation before the city attorney and the staff are tasked with rewriting it, which is part of the procedures as outlined in this staff report. So I have a very narrow question just for this particular amendment, and that is we propose striking the bonding requirements. And I was curious about that. I work around the country and bonding is a very common requirement. So I wondered why we were striking that.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So we are going to keep the bonding requirements depending on the project. So if you'll notice, we also struck out the contract forms because as staff needs to, we need to update the contract forms, and we don't feel like we should come back to council every single time we want to tweak the forms. And so that's the same group, that's the same mindset regarding the bonding. That the bonding requirements may change over time. What the bond form looks like will change. The requirements for bonding will change. We are definitely going to keep bonding requirements for those projects, particularly construction projects that require bonding. But we wanted the flexibility to change our forms, change the amounts depending on changes in law or changes in the market. And so that's why it struck out in the document that we're asking council to adopt, but we still will keep that practice.
Thank you very much, Mr. City Attorney. That's very clear. I didn't realize that. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions for colleagues? I see no hands raised. Let's open it to the members of the public, see whether they have any questions.
I don't see anyone with their hand up, and I don't have any emails.
Thank you. With that, bring it back to colleagues. Colleagues, any final comments or or can I have a motion, please?
Happy to make a motion to approve item 8I, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the time.
Thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Council Member or Vice Mayor Brownrigg and a second by Council Member O'Brien. We could have roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes. Thank you. With that, we will move on to public hearing.
Can I, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I'm so sorry. It just happened so fast. I just had a sort of quick comment, if it's okay, so my comment was, we just did a whole bunch of work at Peninsula Clean Energy around procurement through a lens of DEAI. And so I just want to make sure when we have a couple parallel universes going on, we have a conversation potentially around DEAI next year. And then we have this procurement policy. So I just want to maybe knit the two together, that as we're working down the road, maybe look at what PCE and the county are doing on this, so that not only is it just the process of procurement, but it's the thoughtful consideration of a diverse and wide-ranging group of potential bidders, and making sure we're being as inclusive as we can when we're asking people to bid on these projects. That's it.
Thank you. And you may want to propose a new agenda item on that one. So with that, we're moving on to public hearings. Item number 9A is adoption of a resolution of the City Council of the City of Burlingame repealing the Bayfront specific plan and the North Burlingame Rollins Road specific plan, recognizing that certain previously entitled projects may continue to pay fees associated with these plans. SEQA review action was evaluated for the general plan environmental impact report, and no further environmental review is required. An introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Burlingame repealing the Bayfront development fee and the North Burlingame Rollins Road development fee. SEQA determination action was not evaluated in the general plan environmental impact report, and no further environmental review is required. Okay. Mr. Gina or Mr. Gardner, I'm not sure who's going to lead us.
Thank you, Mayor Ortiz. I can take the lead with the support of City Attorney Gina for questions or things that I may overlook, but hopefully I get it right. As mentioned, and I'll pull up some slides just to kind of help us through this. There's two pieces to this item. The first is the consideration of the repeal of both the Bayfront specific plan and the North Burlingame Rollins Road specific plan. And then the second part is the ordinance related to the associated fees. The Bayfront specific plan was first adopted in, here we go. Bayfront specific plan was first adopted in 2004 with amendments in 2006 and 2012. The North Burlingame Rollins Road specific plan was first adopted in 2004 with amendments in 2007. Since that time, the city's general plan was updated, followed by the zoning ordinance update. The general plan is intended to supersede the Bayfront and North Burlingame Rollins Road specific plans and includes policies and regulations for each specific plan area. These policies and regulations are quite different from those in the former specific plans, and that is deliberate. In the general plan update, the community was asked what areas should change and what areas should stay the same. The consensus was that the Bayfront, North Burlingame, and Rollins Road areas should all change, and the general plan reflects that direction. However, the specific plans have remained on the books and will do so until formally repealed. This has caused confusion as people have tried to figure out whether the specific plans are still in effect or whether to follow the general plan or the specific plan. With the repeals, the general plan will be considered the guiding policy document for the respective specific plan areas. The Bayfront and North Rollins Roads, North Burlingame Rollins Road specific plans also had associated fees. And we prepared these tables just to kind of clarify. It's a little confusing in terms of how the development fees for these specific plans relate to the citywide public facilities impact fees. So this shows a comparison of a project. This is as of now and from, basically in years past, a project within the Bayfront specific plan or the North Burlingame Rollins Road specific plan area compared to one that's in a different part of town, whether that's downtown, California Drive, anywhere else that's not within these specific plan areas. The development fees for the specific plans are really focused on streetscapes. So as such, they are comparable to the traffic and streets fees that are found in the citywide public facilities impact fees. For projects, basically everybody pays all of the public facilities impact fees with the exception of if you're within one of these specific plan areas, the project pays the respective development fee instead of the traffic and streets fee, but otherwise they pay all the same fees. This will change should the fees be repealed with the plans. the Bayfront development fee or North Burlingame Rollins Road specific plan fee will be replaced with the traffic and streets fees, so that at this point, all the projects, whether they're in or out of the specific plan areas, will pay the same fees. Oops, let me go through my notes again here. So with the last but not least, there has been work on a new specific plan. I just want to mention it for the North Rollins Road area. I want to acknowledge council members O'Brien and Colson, who have been working on that as part of the advisory committee. And we will have a staff report and discussion at the next council meeting on December 5th to discuss that plan. So with all of this background, the city council is being asked to consider two actions for this item. The adoption of the resolution to repeal the Bayfront specific plan and the North Burlingame Rollins Road specific plan, recognizing that previously entitled projects may continue to pay those fees with those plans. And then also the corresponding introduction of an ordinance of the city council repealing the Bayfront development fee and the North Burlingame Rollins Road development fee. So the resolution would be acted on tonight. The ordinance would be introduced and it acted on in the next council meeting on December 5th. With that, I am available for questions as well as City Attorney Guinan.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Appreciate the presentation. Colleagues, any questions for Mr. Gardner, Mr. Guinan? I see none. So, Councilmember Beach.
Thanks. I don't know if I was first, but happy to go in the chute. No, thank you, Mr. Gardner, for the great visuals. I think the presentation you gave really helped a visual person to see how these fees and the replacement fees would work out is very helpful. One of the things that said for projects that are sort of in the pipeline already, or projects that have past projects have paid in, and they're also potentially one of the projects that could be invested in were El Camino Real Streetscape project as part of the North Burlingame Rollins Road development fees. And don't need an answer now, but I think it would be interesting to understand whether or not those streetscape projects in that section of El Camino Real, whether or not some of these collected fees that we've accumulated could be used for utility undergrounding. That might be another bucket that could be helpful to us. I don't know if anybody knows that answer, or that's one question I had. And then I had a comment, but I'll reserve comment for after public comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Beach. Councilmember Colson.
Thanks. I just have a question for Kevin around. So as we put all these fees together, we have community benefit, everything's overlaid on a giant sort of environmental impact report in CEQA. And as, say, for example, projects layer on, is there a situation where like one project sort of pushes everything over, whether it's water, like the need for lights, et cetera, and then they bear a disproportionate amount of costs for infrastructure, or is it all pretty much through these fees spread out evenly?
The intention of the public facilities impact fees is that they are, everybody's paying the same fees. So they are proportional. So bigger projects pay bigger fees. So it's typically based on square footage or bedrooms or what have you. So, but it is meant to be, same fee. Smaller projects pay the lower fee because they have less impact. Presumably the bigger projects have more impact and they pay the bigger fees, but nobody's being penalized. It's meant to be very proportional to both the size and the anticipated impact of those projects.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that.
Thank you. I think Vice Mayor Brownrigg was up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I understand this to fundamentally be sort of a housekeeping matter, which I appreciate. But I was curious, why is the downtown specific plan not included in this list?
So the downtown specific plan never had development fees specific to its plan adopted. And let me give a little context. So with both the Rollins Road the North Burlingame Rollins Road Plan and the Bayfront specific plan. Those each had a series of streetscape improvements that were outlined and also costed out in the plans. And then fees were, basically there was a nexus study for those fees, and then the fees were based on the anticipated costs of those projects. The downtown specific plan did have some projects outlined. However, no fees were ever, there wasn't a fee study, and no fees were established specific to that planning area. So instead they pay the public facilities impact fees, you know, they are paying some fees. It's just not specific to the downtown area.
And the notion that there might be conflicting standards is not a problem because the general plan basically adopted the downtown specific plan. Is that why?
That's right. And that kind of reflects the public input we had for the general plan. Was we heard there was interest in North Burlingame, Rollins Road, and Bayfront having some changes, but people seemed to like what was going on in downtown. So the general plan pretty much just incorporated the downtown specific plan, pretty much lock, stock, and barrel, and including with the environmental review.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Brien.
Yes, and to clarify, Kevin, so the general plan, though, still supersedes the specific area plan, correct?
Yes, and that includes, so in downtown, they're pretty much one of the same, but yeah, technically in terms of the kind of hierarchy in the world of planning, general plan is always at the top. Specific plans are an implementation of the general plan, but for example, if there's a conflict, general plan rules. That would be the same with if there's a conflict between zoning and general plan, it's the general plan that rules. So the issue we've had with these two older specific plans is the general plan really did go a different direction. And, you know, which one's in charge? It's the general plan. But meanwhile, you've still got these old specific plans on the books that make it a little confusing.
Okay, and then my other question is, you know, once, you know, these fees are established, let's say over time you see that maybe the fees are not sufficient. What is the process then to increase the fees? Do you do like another nexus study then to kind of provide the facts to enable you to increase if the facts are there?
Yes, absolutely. And that is something that is a high priority right now. So staff has contracted with a consultant who has expertise in administering these nexus studies. So they'll help us. It's really time to update those public facilities impact fees. They were adopted in 2008, and you know, certainly lots of things have changed since then. Not the fees, however, they never had an escalator. So there's a lot of good reasons why we should be looking at those fees again. So we have a consultant that'll help us both prepare an RFP and also manage the study itself, given it is fairly labor intensive, and we'll want some help with that. That is a high priority, and we intend to have that going starting at early next year.
So then I assume then once that's done, can you then legally put an escalator in there?
Yes, there's nothing to
Assuming you
say.
can, so.
And, you know, I don't know why the current fees did not have an escalator, but interestingly, so the specific plan fees always did have an escalator. So it's something that's common, and it can be based on CPI. It could be based on any kind of index. And for whatever reason, just the public facilities ones don't happen, but probably be a good idea in the next round to include that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, any other questions before we open it to the public? None. So with that, Madam City, Madam City Clerk, could you please check for public comment?
I'd ask that you first have me read the title of the ordinance.
Let's have you read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Burlingame repealing the Bayfront development fee and the North Burlingame Rollins Road development fee. CEQA determination action was evaluated in the general plan environmental impact report, and no further environmental review is required.
So we need a motion to waive further reading.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
And can we also open up the public hearing? Can we do both motions in one move?
Very good. Let's do the, Madam Councilmember Beach, would you care to amend your motion to include
Sure.
both?
I
Very
make a
good.
motion to open the public hearing and waive further reading.
Very good. So do we have a second?
I'll second.
Very good. We have a motion by Councilmember Beach, a second by Councilmember O'Brien. If we could have roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Colson,
Yes.
or Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes.
And now, I don't see any hands raised and I don't have any emails.
Very good. So we bring it back to colleagues for any final comments. Councilmember Beach.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I just want to echo Councilmember O'Brien's comments and great questions about, and Director Gardner's intention to do a citywide public utilities fee study. I had the opportunity to attend some education on some new legislation at the Cal Cities annual conference. AB 602 requires us to update things more frequently, but there's just so many good reasons with all this new development. It requires more services, more calls for service. So it's a good thing for us to do. I'd also hope we could consider not only the Nexus study, but also the market feasibility study as well, just to see what the market can bear. And, you know, as we look holistically at these things, that we can also have a policy discussion about not only the fees that we listed here, but certainly in the context of our housing impact fees and possibly of some other new fees this council might want to consider as part of the study as well. Other cities are doing additional fees. You know, there could be a public art fee, there could be a childcare fee, there could be different things we might want to explore, and it's worth having that conversation before the study gets too far down the line. And definitely an escalator should be considered too. Thanks so much for the hard work on this.
Thank you. Sounds like study sessions coming up. And with that, okay, so walk me through this because the staff report doesn't have it laid out. So we have two action items. Do we want to do them separately, Mr. Guina?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I recommend that you first entertain a motion on the resolution to rescind the specific plans. And then after you've taken that action, to then entertain a second motion to adopt the first reading and bring it back for second reading.
Very good. So on the first question, colleagues,
Mr. Mayor,
I
Mr. Mayor, may I please make a motion to rescind the two specific plans for North Burlingame Rollins Road and the Bayfront?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. We have a motion by the Vice Mayor and we need a second.
I'll second.
Or either one. doesn't matter.
Gina.
I'll let council, since it's Councilmember O'Brien's winding down time, I'm going to give her the opportunity to second that.
It's called short timers prerogative. So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Brownrigg and the second by Councilmember O'Brien. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Colson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Thank you. Yes. And now as to question number 2, introduction of an ordinance. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion for the introduction of the ordinance of the City Council of Burlingame, repealing the Bayfront development fee and North Burlingame Rollins Road development fee.
Bring
Thank
it
you.
back for a second reading. Yeah.
And
Yes.
bring it back for a sec. That's the first thing she said.
And I can second that.
So we have a motion by Councilmember O'Brien and a second by Councilmember Colson. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Colson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes. Thank you for that. And we move on to, thank you, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Guina, for your presentation and for your hard work on all this. This is not easy stuff. So thank you for that. Let's move on now to Staff reports and communications. We're going to do item 10A, which is the consideration of 2 appointments to the Measure I Citizens Oversight Committee. And I don't recall who's
That's
we
me.
have our city manager, Ms. Goldman.
Thank you, Mayor Ortiz. Members of the council, you have 2 vacancies on the Measure I Citizens Oversight Committee, and that is our quarter-cent sales tax oversight committee. Vacancies are due to the resignations of 2 committee members, Kimberly Rosales and B. Hui Ye, both of whom moved out of the area. As we always do, we publicize the vacancies, sent notification letters to past commission and committee applicants. We received 4 applications as of the deadline in the end of October. 2 of those applicants withdrew the night of the interviews. You interviewed Jack Easterbrook and Krista Zitnick via Zoom on November 16th. And the appointee terms will be for the remainder of the former committee members' terms. So they will go until February 20th, 2024. And if you could open it for public comment before you text your votes to Megan. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any questions before we open it to public comment? No, with that, let's open it to public comment, please.
I don't have any emails and I don't see any hands raised.
Thank you. And so with that, we will go back to colleagues. We need to text Megan with our choices.
All right. Councilmember O'Brien, Jack and Krista. Councilmember Beach, Zitnick and Easterbrook. Councilmember Colson, Jack and Krista. Vice Mayor Brownrigg, Easterbrook and Zitnick, and Mayor Ortiz. Slight misspelling, but he meant Easterbrook and Zitnick.
I apologize for autocorrect. Okay, so welcome, Mr. Easterbrook and Ms. Zidnick. We're really happy to have you, so thank you for putting your name in. And with that, we will move on to item number 9 or 10B, which is a consideration of appointment to the Beautification Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have 1 vacancy on the Beautification Commission, and that is due to the resignation of Commissioner Maria Rivera. She had 2 years left on her term. We did the same dance, publicizing the vacancy, sending notification letters to past commission applicants. We received 3 applications as of the extended deadline of November 4th. 1 applicant withdrew before those interviews took place. So you interviewed 2 candidates, Hadia Khoury and Rachel Sear via Zoom on November 16th. And this term will be for the remainder of Commissioner Maria Rivera's term. So it will end on October 7th, 2024. Happy to answer any questions. And then if you could open it for public comment before you send your votes in to Megan. And again, this is for 1 seat and you have 2 applicants. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. Colleagues, any questions of our City Manager? Having none, if we could just open it to public comment, please.
I have no emails and I see no hands raised.
Very good. Then we'll go back to my colleagues. If we could just text your choice to Megan.
Councilmember O'Brien, Hadia Chowry, Councilmember Beach, Chowry, Councilmember Colson, Hadia Chowry.
Khoury, sorry, Megan.
Khoury.
Khoury.
Sorry, so I'm mispronouncing it. I'm so sorry. Vice Mayor Brownrigg, Hadia Khoury, and Mayor Ortiz, Rachel Sear. So it looks like Hadia has.
Ms. Khoury, welcome. Thank you for your interest in the commission. Really appreciate it. And Ms. Sear, we hope you stay involved and we will have plenty of other opportunities. So thank you for that. And with that, we will move on to item number 10.
Mayor Ortiz, you have a hand up from Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. Just briefly for the record, I did want to apologize to colleagues. I was on business travel during these interviews, but for the applicants, I was able to read the applications and listen to the interviews. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. And with that, we are ready to move on. Okay, we will move on to item number 10C, which is we're going to receive information from the town of Hillsborough regarding the proposed Highline Water Pipeline project and authorize the mayor to sign a letter of support for the project. So I'm not sure who is presenting, so.
Syed, do you want to start off? And then Megan, if you could bring over, I think Paul is listed as Town of Hillsborough. I don't know. Paul, you can let us know. I see Ann Ritzma is also on. I don't know if Ann wants to be pulled over. You can let us know. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Briefly, staff recommends that City Council receive presentation from Town of Hillsborough Director of Public Works, Paul Willis, regarding the proposed Highline potable water line pipeline project from Harry Tracy treatment plant in Millbrae to the Town of Hillsborough, and authorize the mayor to sign the attached letter of support for the project for the FEMA grant that they're applying, and they're in the process of applying for the grant. Brief background, the Town of Hillsborough is exploring construction of a new potable water transmission main parallel to Skyline Boulevard from Harry Tracy water treatment plant in Millbrae running south to the Town of Hillsborough. The proposed water transmission main will traverse along Skyline Boulevard in Burlingame before it enters Hillsborough and connects to their system. The new water line will provide seismic redundancy and backup water supply in the event of seismic event impacting the existing San Francisco Public Utilities Commission infrastructure serving the peninsula. Hillsborough is looking for partnering with both cities of Millbrae and Burlingame, and should the benefits and cost sharing be deemed desirable for each of the agencies. In addition to potential seismic redundancy and emergency water supply connection, other advantages may include improved water supply for fire protection purposes for some of the hillside areas in Burlingame. With that, I would like to invite Paul to come and share, present the council.
Great. Thank you so much, Syed. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Burlingame City Council. I'm Paul Willis. I'm the Public Works Director for the Town of Hillsborough. I'm also joined by Ann Ritzma, our City Manager. And I can ask the City Clerk to also unmute or allow to join Mr. Jeff Tarantino, who's with our team, as well as Darren Bond with Carollo Engineers. I'm going to share my screen so I could show you some images of what Syed did a great job of providing background to. Right. So please let me know, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So as Syed said, we think this is a great project for all of our communities, Burlingame, Millbrae, and the Town of Hillsborough. Just to give you a brief overview, the Hetch Hetchy system, which you know we receive our water from, it's really an incredible system because it leverages snowmelt. About 80% of the storage originates to the east or Yosemite National Park. The biggest reservoirs are there, and snowmelt allows water to be stored in these reservoirs. And during even these times or years of drought, the Hetch Hetchy system has been in a much better position than the rest of the state because of this leverage. It's also an incredible system because it utilizes gravity flow. And so the water is conveyed to us here in the peninsula, as well as 2.2 million other residents at a very economical price because it's all gravity flow downhill. Now, there are some challenges. We know that the system is over 100 years old. It does cross three major faults. You could see the bright red, the Calaveras Fault, the Hayward Fault, and the San Andreas Fault to our west. The Town of Hillsborough and Burlingame, as well as Millbrae, our neighbors, are where the bigger bright star is. We do know a couple of years ago, the SFPUC did spend over $4.6 billion to harden and improve the system. And a lot of work was done, including a fifth pipeline. The goal of the program is really to restore water to the system within 72 hours. We do know just 2 months ago, there was a grand jury report that the town was part of. Not sure if Burlingame also received it, but the question was, are you ready? Is your community ready for the big one? And we know that the WISF program did do a lot of good things, but because of the challenges traveling, over 200 miles, crossing 3 major faults, and going through areas of young bay mud, areas of liquefaction, that there are some challenges, and we would hope that outages aren't going to last very long, but we certainly have a better solution, and that's what this project is. So when we started the project, the image, so just to provide orientation, you can actually see SFO with the upper left. Burlingame is the top half of the picture, or upper right. You can see Hillsborough and Millbrae. The oval, or the skinny oval to the top with the blue arrows, that's El Camino Real. And this signifies where we all receive our water from. We receive our water from what's called the aqueduct system. The aqueduct system is 3 significantly large pipelines that are under El Camino Real. And when we started this project, it was an efficiency project, frankly. And that's because the town is a hillside community, very much like Millbrae. And we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars just on electrical costs, moving about 3 million gallons a day up our hills to provide sufficient water pressure and just water for our community. So when we first thought of this project, it was really a project for efficiency and to save electrical costs. But as we studied it more, and we have some very well nationally and globally renowned specialists on our project, that this became a lot more than that because of the seismic benefits. Unfortunately, because of the areas of liquefaction and those pipelines that are in the aqueduct zone, we know that if there was a major earthquake, especially on the San Andreas, that we should expect outages. Now, the town does ourselves. We do have 17 tanks with 9 million gallons of storage. Burlingame, for example, or in contrast, has 5 tanks with 2.9 million gallons of storage. So there's the negative for the town is we spend a lot on pumping, but we do have storage that can give us up to 3 days of water. Millbrae is in a similar situation. So what we found out is a few years ago, to the lower left in the circle with the other blue arrow, is the SFPUC spent $400 million to upgrade the Harry Tracy plant. And this is capable of withstanding a maximum predicted earthquake on the San Andreas. So what this project would do is connect directly to Harry Tracy at an upper elevation, saving us money for pumping costs and efficiency. And we would use earthquake resistant pipes. These pipes are actually designed to withstand earthquakes even larger than what's produced on the San Andreas. There actually have been field tested in Kubota, Japan. They're called Kubota pipe. There is a US equivalent made in San Leandro called a US pipe. And these pipes would make it through the big one and provide us immediate water without any downtime. The other advantage to this location, and I'll show you another image here, and I'll talk about it, is the location closer to 280. So again, the Harry Tracy plant is an ideal connection. Should the Hetch Hetchy system go down, we know that the San Andreas Lake, as well as the Crystal Springs Reservoir, can provide up to 3.5 months of water to the peninsula. So we can really make our connection and make sure that we have water for our communities by leveraging that plant. So on the design, as I spoke about just a moment ago, is this pipeline. It's about 5.5 miles long. It would be under Skyline Boulevard, so we minimize disruptions to our residents, but we put it at the upper elevation. So it's ready at the highest points of all of our communities. The circles that look like upside down rabbit ears, those are actually high volume, very large fire hydrants because we're connecting to a transmission pipeline. So in the event of a wildfire, if there was a wildfire and we know that ignitions start in the open space and it was to blow west to east, these large hydrants would be able to knock down these fires and prevent them from spreading into each of our respective communities. So that's the other beauty of this specific alignment. The pipeline, as we design it, can meet all of our regular daily flows, and including fire flows and emergency flows. We do consider all the seismic vulnerabilities. We've added these even minor faults that haven't ruptured for very long. They're in gold here. And so we minimize the crossings. And again, we're using earthquake resistant pipelines. So again, project benefits, a new point of connection, improve our system resiliency and water that's available during an earthquake. We expand wildfire protection opportunities to protect our communities from that risk. We will reduce operation costs for all of our systems. And then we get to continue to work with your great staffs and our other neighbors at Millbrae. We did present a similar presentation to their city council just a few weeks ago, and it was met very favorably. The project alignment, again, what I'm going to do at this point, if Jeff is unmuted, I'd like him to speak because Jeff Tarantino is the Vice President of Fire and Loretta. Before joining FNL, he worked with EKI, and he is very knowledgeable of the Burlingame system and worked on your master plan as well as some of your bigger CIP projects. So Jeff, if you're unmuted, would you like to talk about the next specifics to Burlingame system?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. And good evening, Mayor Ortiz, council members. Again, Jeff Tarantino with Fire and Loretta. And as Paul said, with a former employer at EKI, I had the opportunity to support the city of Burlingame in completing its water system master plan and then begin implementation of some of the key projects that we'll discuss here on the next couple of slides that we believe will receive a secondary benefit if Burlingame were to participate in the project. Next slide, please. So here on the screen before you is a snapshot of your system. This is an exhibit from some of the several documents that were prepared in support of the water system master plan. And one of the things that I think it's been important to acknowledge is the level of investment the city has made in its water system improvements. I got the opportunity to work with Public Works Director Martuza in the early days of the implementation. And one of the things that was done as first priority project was to seismically retrofit Mills Reservoir there shown in the bottom left-hand corner of the exhibit. The Mills Reservoir is located on the west side of 280. It is a critical portion of the city's distribution system, and it was why it was one of the first major components within the city system that was upgraded. Another project that improved the resiliency of the city system was the creation of the Truesdale pump station. It's not circled here, but it's kind of in the middle on Truesdale Avenue next to, I forget the name of the school, apologies. And that pump station was built partially to reduce the reliance on multiple pump stations in order to convey flows from the aqueduct zone up into the Mills Reservoir. It also provided the city of Burlingame with the opportunity to improve the level of flows being conveyed to the hills. And so one of the things that we have found through our studies with the town with the proposed potable water transmission main is that because we are going to be installing the transmission main along Skyline Boulevard, there's an opportunity to tie this directly into infrastructure that the city of Burlingame has already installed. So in the event there is any disruption to the SFPUC system along the El Camino Real, which are shown there in the purple dashed lines, kind of in the middle of the figure there, that would impact deliveries to the Truesdale pump station that's critical in conveying water into the hills. There would be a secondary supply directly from the Harry Tracy water treatment plant that could be conveyed directly to the Mills Reservoir with really minimal additional infrastructure from what the city already has implemented and maintains. Next slide, please. And so by conveying water to the Mills Reservoir, that's actually the highest elevation within your system. And so Mills Reservoir, in theory, would be able to convey water back into the system. Currently and under normal operations, what I learned from working with your operations staff in my previous job was that it can convey water to several pressure zones along Truesdale Boulevard. But there's also the opportunity to potentially convey water from right to left on the screen towards the Skyview Reservoir and then down into other zones. What is important here is that under emergency conditions, we believe that there would be an opportunity for the operations staff to actually allow water to be moved from the upper zones to the lower zones that are currently supplied directly from the aqueduct system. By studying this option, we believe that there would be an opportunity to minimize disruption to Burlingame customers in the event of a disruption along the SFPUC aqueduct system. So this is something that is important, requires further study, but based on interactions with your operations staff, it is something that we believe would be feasible in the event of an emergency. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Jeff. And certainly Jeff will answer any questions that you may have as he's studied your system. So as we explore the benefits, and Syed and I have spoke about this in the past, when you compare between the various municipalities, certainly the town of Hillsborough and Millbrae would have more benefits for energy efficiency because of our offset in costs for pumping. And we know that the aqueduct zone does fortunately provide about 85% of your residents a water that you don't need to store, pump, or pay money for additional electrical costs. And so therefore we put a plus minus when we compare the energy efficiency scores here. As far as wildfire, we do believe, because all of our communities touch that interface zone at 280, that there is a benefit for all of our communities to be able to knock down a wildfire immediately. Seismic resiliency, all of us will certainly receive a benefit on the seismic part because we will have a guaranteed pipeline that could make it through the big one and other very large earthquakes. It's been said in the past that, and I've heard, can't the SFPUC use the existing Harry Tracy line and backfeed through the aqueduct? Yes and no, depending on where the break is. If the break is on any of the three pipes, the system should de-energize. They would shut down valves, and backfeeding may not be a possibility. So a new connection to Harry Tracy is certainly the best way to go and provides us with the best guarantee. And then the last benefit, increased storage. That's good for all of us, especially in the event of a major catastrophe, whether it's an earthquake or wildfire. As far as next steps, for years we've been communicating and working with BOSCA. They've actually helped us with our communications with the SFPUC. And so we've answered a lot of their questions. And we're at a point now where if we continue and we're asked to be the project lead, then they blessed this project. Their concern really was revenues and where the connections are and the maintenance of those connections. And certainly we're able to answer that with a future project. We have been pursuing grant funding. And so I could tell you that we've made it through the first round, and we've been invited to submit a final application in early December for BRIC funding. This is federal funding, and they would provide 70% of the cost. And so we put in our initial project for a maximum project to serve all of our communities based on a 2025 completion date. And so we put an estimate, hard costs and soft costs, of $32.5 million, and they would fund 70% of that. And so our share for the three cities, depending on how we want to split that up, could be as little as $8.1 million total. At this point, we're asking for your letters of support. We're receiving one from Millbrae, so we can continue on our behalf of all the cities. And if, as Jeff said and Syed said, if you do think and you agree with us that this is a great project, we'd ask that you continue and direct your staff to work with us on a memorandum of understanding so we can find out precisely how much water the city of Burlingame would like, because we have the flexibility to upsize our pipe based on our specific needs. Once we understand that, then we can go to the next steps, which would be CEQA and then the preliminary design. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I know it's a lot of information towards the end of the evening. But happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for the presentation. We appreciate the partnership. So I have a council member O'Brien has her hand raised. So
Yes, so my question is, what makes this piping earthquake resistant?
Yeah, so it's specifically designed to deflect without fracturing. If I had, actually, we have Darren Bond on, Vice President Carollo. He's actually much more familiar with this pipe, but it was actually developed in Kubota, Japan. It's called the Kubota pipe, and it's actually undergone in-field testing with even larger earthquakes. So basically the pipe doesn't split apart or fracture in the event of a major earthquake. Darren, do you want to add anything to that? If he's
yes, I am. Thanks, Paul. I think you got most of it there, but I mean, in short, there's different manufacturers, different companies that fabricate this pipe, both U.S. and overseas manufacturers, and we designed the pipe to deflect. So it's got a lot of rotation at the joints, and it also has a significant amount of expansion and contraction at the joints, and so you can kind of think of it as a slinky pipe. So it's very soft in its response to a deflection from at a fault or at a landslide crossing.
So I think you mentioned this pipe is in San Leandro somewhere. Is it in any other cities that you're aware of?
No, that's the manufacturer, U.S.
Oh, sorry, the manufacturer. So where else has this been used in the peninsula, or has it?
The closest installation, well, there's a few installations. The SFPUC is using it for their auxiliary water supply project in the city of San Francisco. Carollo led a project for Valley Water, formerly Santa Clara Valley Water District, at their Penitencia water treatment plant, 60, 66, and 72. I believe there's a Hayward fault crossing that used similar earthquake resistant ductile iron pipe. So it has been used in the area.
Great, thank you.
And just, sorry, Councilmember, and the auxiliary water supply system that Darren referred to, this is that secondary high priority fire system that City and County of San Francisco operate. So this is specifically intended to be operational after a major earthquake, and it's of the projects that Darren described, that's the system that has similar size pipe as we would have for this system. So it's widely used throughout San Francisco.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, colleagues, any other questions? Councilmember Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to the town of Hillsborough for this really interesting presentation on infrastructure. I have three questions, and maybe this is for our staff or whoever can answer this. Certainly understand if there's disruption to the El Camino Real system, this could really benefit Burlingame. What about our daily operations? I think what I heard is that Hillsborough and Millbrae definitely could benefit from the energy savings from pumping up, because it's using gravity, pumping down. How much would Burlingame use this system for our regular operations, non-emergency?
So Jeff, you can elaborate on this, but if we connect to your mill's tank, then we would provide pressure to these upper zones. Again, saving money, not as much, but we would save money because you do have some tanks there to have excess of 1 million gallons to provide to that area. But most of your downtown already receives water from the aqueduct zone. So during daily operations, that's a great benefit to connect to that, because you're lower lying and you take advantage of the gravity feed that originates from the Hetch Hetchy system in Yosemite.
Okay. All right, I think I understand where you're coming from on that. The other question is, if there were an emergency situation, all three could, under this scenario, if it's designed properly, all three communities could draw their water from this upper pipe and have everything they need because of basically access to the San Andreas Lake and Crystal Spring. There's plenty of water there for all three communities.
Correct. All three of us and other communities, if they were able to tap into Harry Tracy. So that's how we get the maximum build out of our pipeline at $32.5 million. We design for our maximum day demand or our daily demand. So that way we can continue to run our cities as normal.
Okay, great. And my last question, maybe this is for Chief Barron, I think I saw him here, but I certainly intuitively, the wildland urban interface for all of our communities up there as far as fires is something that this could benefit from, but there's different levels of risk for different communities. Just like Chief Barron's thoughts on any of this, if this is, if the solution would be in the right place with the right equipment and with the right capacity. Do you have any thoughts? Basically, I know we don't have as much risk as some other communities, right? Or at least in studies we've heard before.
Right, and I haven't really looked into this project greatly, how it would directly benefit the fire part of it, but I know more water is better when you're dealing with fire.
And just to add to Chief, and we can certainly give him as much information as he likes, but our thought here is we put all of these high volume hydrants at the perimeter or our first defense to our communities. Then any ignition that starts in this open space area. And we've had a couple over this past summer, but they were small. But if we had one with a corresponding wind event, we would certainly be able to knock it down immediately with these larger hydrants.
Yep. And fire certainly doesn't discriminate city boundaries or anything like that. So thank you.
Colleagues, any other questions? I do have a question myself. So can we go back to the financing? I'm just make sure I heard you correctly. The total cost of the project is 32.5, and the cities would come up with 8.1. That is, all three cities would have to contribute 8.1 million?
No, in total. So it's 32.5 is the total amount. FEMA is allowing us to base our estimate for both hard costs and soft costs, so design, environmental, and as well as construction. It's 32.5 million with a 2025 completion. So it's a future value cost. And the grant would cover 70% of the $32.5 million. So our remaining share split between the three cities is $8,125,000.
Okay, so the 8 million will be split between, okay. And then, so the following question is the signing this letter today. We are basically signing on to providing that part of our financing.
Maybe it's Director Mertuzza can elaborate. I don't.
Can I just, I'm going to jump in here. Thanks, Paul. So if we sign the letter today, we're saying we think this is an interesting and good project, and FEMA, you should fund it. The question of whether the city of Burlingame participates financially or not in the project is still something that staff needs to do some due diligence on. And that way we do that due diligence, listen to the council about whether you want us to participate in it financially. They would size the pipe, and then that would tell us what the cost would be for our city. So right now, all we're asking you to do is listen to this presentation, take in the information, and then say, yes, go forth. You can send a letter. And there's a draft letter, I believe, in your packet tonight.
Right. So, okay. So, but just to be clear, I mean, it is important if we're saying, yes, let's move forward with this project, we're not really committing to helping with the financing.
Correct. That all has to get figured out. They could do this project without us. They'd rather not, but they would make a smaller pipe. It would cost less money. And then the only impact us really is that our, they'd be going along Skyline and digging up the street and then putting it all back together.
Very good. Okay, colleagues, anybody else have any questions? I don't see, Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I have noticed that Director Mertuzza has his hand up, and it may be that he'll answer my question. So perhaps we should let him go first.
Director Martusa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to mention a couple of points that Councilmember Beach brought up earlier regarding operational, situation in Burlingame versus Hillsborough, whether this project would benefit or not. As Paul pointed out, that 85% of our demand is primarily from the in the aqueduct zone, which is a gravity zone. So we don't have as much of a pumping need as Hillsborough and Millbrae has. If we were to, from a daily operational purposes, were to use the water from this proposed pipeline, then we would definitely have some pumping that we would not have pumping at this time. And also, there are several zones. The 85% of the city system is zoned in a different way, PRV, pressure reducing valves, and what have you. We would have to replumb the entire 85% of our system to redesignate the pressure valves and all that. So it does not make sense for us from an operational perspective, but it does make sense from an emergency water supply perspective. The city has several inner ties with multiple agencies. We do have inner tie with Millbrae right now. We do have with Hillsborough. We do have with Cal Water on the south side of the city. So and having an additional connection from this pipeline along Skyline Boulevard for the Mills tank, as Paul pointed out, would be good. Additionally, for the area that is near the Mills Canyon, fire protection, this project would provide additional firefighting capacity. So those are some of the benefits. So I just want to clarify that.
Great, thank you for that. Vice Mayor, was that your answer included in that?
Not quite, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of very quick things. So one, I guess I've been laboring under, I've been ignorant all these years. What is the source of water for those two reservoirs off of 280? I just assumed it was Hetch Hetchy, but is that wrong?
It is correct. It is Hetch Hetchy. It comes from El Camino Real along Truesdale, and then it goes up into the, there are multiple lines that run from all the way, fed by gravity from the Yosemite Valley, comes all the way to, through Burlingame along El Camino Real. And so those are definitely, the Mills tank that you see up on the hills west of 280, they are fed directly by the gravity feed from Hetch Hetchy, pumped into Truesdale pump, and then pumped back on top of the hill. So that water is directly Hetch Hetchy water. Whereas the Harry Tracy treatment plant water is a little bit different. That water goes through a treatment processes. It goes through also Crystal Springs Reservoir. The water gets treated there and then fed to San Francisco, and also get back fed to multiple cities along the peninsula during Hetch Hetchy has a shutdown for maintenance purposes.
But the source of the water is Hetch Hetchy.
By and large, yes. By and large, majority of the source of the water. Okay. The Harry Tracy treatment plant does have a blending. They do blend the water there from the Crystal Springs and as well as Hetch Hetchy.
That's a great question. In fact, many of our residents thought the same thing, Vice Mayor Brownrigg, that doesn't all of our water come from there, but as part of a percentage, very little of our water comes from there, and that's why the water is controlled. The elevation is controlled by the SFPUC, and even during a drought, the elevation is always high because of the storage is always kept at a good level. The water does come from Hetch Hetchy. They do need to dechlorinate or take the chlorine out before it's put in the reservoirs. And then, as Mr. Martusa said, when it's taken back out through Harry Tracy, they blend it, they add chloramines, and even add ozone in their system to further purify the water from Harry Tracy.
That's really interesting.
So what I'm trying to understand is this is not a different source of water. It's just a different way to get at the same water, right? So if the Hetch Hetchy system had no water in it, this wouldn't help. What this helps is if the direct line break, so those turnouts break in an earthquake, then we have a secondary way of accessing the water. Have I got that basically right?
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
Earthquake
So then per the city of Burlingame, and I appreciate the city manager's comment that we're not being asked this question tonight. The question we have to wrestle with is just an insurance policy. How much is the insurance policy worth? It's not giving us access to different water that would supplement Hetch Hetchy. So I appreciate the presentation and the ingenuity behind it. And I think I understand the questions that we'll have to wrestle with whenever that time comes. So, and having said that, I'm very happy to see the mayor write a letter in support, because if nothing else, we should be supporting our sister cities in their efforts to harden their, do what they think is best for their citizens. So I'm fully in support of the letter. I'm still a little bit uncertain how I feel about the redundancy for Burlingame.
Very good. Okay, so any other question? So, can I have something that you said just stuck with me now. When you were showing the graphics, if there was a disruption with the Hetch Hetchy pipe that comes across the bay, we would have at Crystal Springs a reservoir that would be able to feed the city for a while.
That's right. If you connect with us in this new pipeline, we would have 3.5 months of water. So it certainly give the SFPUC adequate time, up to months, to restore service to their large transmission pipelines.
Okay, so back to what the vice mayor was asking. Yes, in fact, it is from the same source, but we have storage on the Crystal Springs Reservoir that we may not otherwise have as much availability to without this pipeline.
That's correct, because you have 5 total tanks and 2.9 million gallons for your whole city. In comparison, the town Hillside community has 9 million gallons. We have triple the storage of Burlingame, so we can actually withstand a few extra days. But if the aqueduct zone does become depressurized in a big earthquake, then you may be short of water immediately.
Excellent. Okay, think that makes me feel a little, actually much better about this whole thing. So, any other questions from colleagues before we open it up to members of the public? And I'm scrolling here, so if I miss you, just scream. I don't see any hands. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it to members of the public. So, Madam City Clerk, if we could check to see if somebody wants to speak on this item.
I don't see anyone with their hands raised. Let me just check my email one more time. And I have no emails.
Very good. So back to my colleagues. So any final comments, or we need a motion to authorize me to sign the letter in support of the project. So any final comments, colleagues? Having none, then maybe I could entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. Go ahead and approve Mayor Ortiz to sign the letter in support of the new water infrastructure for the town of Hillsborough.
And I'll second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Coulson, a second by Councilmember Beach. So could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. And we didn't hear you, but thank you for being here tonight. Yeah, again, thank you for the partnership. I think it's important that we continue to work together. So with that, we will move on to item number 11, which is council committee and activities, reports and announcements. So colleagues, anybody have anything to report? Councilmember Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a few things on the transit front. I know that it's late, but I think these are worth flagging. San Mateo County Transportation Authority, we did approve the proposed, there was no real objection to the proposed grant application. So we do have I think it's over $10 million more for bike pedestrian projects this cycle than our last cycle. So it's looking really good. The final approval and everything for the grants that we talked about in the last Burlingame City Council meeting. Commute.org, I think it's worth just having a sense of this. The shuttle program countywide, ridership is just down, even like lower than 50%. Shuttle rider, you probably saw some news article in the Mercury News, just transit ridership is really down a lot. Commute.org is doing some really important equity study work right now, how these shuttles can be even repurposed from major employers to serve different types of commuters that work different shift work. So that's something to watch. There's also a new centralized platform for TDM compliance that they're putting out. One Commute, basically, Mayor Ortiz represents us on CCAG, but there is a citywide, a countywide TDM compliance requirements, and cities can use this platform that can be really useful to help developers meet their obligations and monitor TDM in different developments. It's something that's an exciting thing that Commute.org is serving cities to help. The Express Lanes project, the construction is now complete on the new segments that are under construction between Whipple and 380, on time and actually under budget. So the construction is complete now, the tolls are being tested, and the new express lane should be fully open early in 2023. And then finally, the other update I wanted to bring to your attention in the Caltrain world, they are embarking, the local policymakers group has talked for many years about making sure that Caltrain is paying attention to the grade of the corridor crossing, right? Grade separations, rather than just cities going piecemeal and doing it one by one, to have a more comprehensive collaborative discussion about those. It won't affect any projects that are in the pipeline, like Broadway, Burlingame is so far along. We are really first in the pipeline in San Mateo County in final design, but there's some really interesting work that they're studying grade crossings throughout the whole corridor, looking at common technical standards, looking at a common vision so that everybody has a common vision for how we've got to get this done. And also it will provide opportunities to get some common major funding. So I think it's some really important work. It just began. We had the first briefing or two, but if it interests you, you can look at some of the agenda packets, or we can deep dive further and have a presentation come back to council. Again, shouldn't really impact Broadway too much, but it's something that's a really good good progress for the Caltrain corridor. Thanks.
Great, thank you for your update. Any others? Colleagues, with that, then we will move on to future agenda items. Does anybody want to propose a future agenda item? Councilmember Colson.
So I just wanted to respond to sort of poll everybody how we should respond to Mr. Manning. I have actually put him in touch with Peninsula Clean Energy, and PCE is doing the evaluation regarding the NEM, net energy monitoring. So I think if we can work on that, we will be responsive to him. We can work in that direction. I don't know. I guess I'm asking, do we need some type of, I guess if we have to do a letter, if there's a letter that's needed, that would have to be on the agenda, Lisa, for December 5th. But if personally, I think it would be a stronger letter if it came from PCE. And so maybe it's just a small staff report updated. I just kind of want to throw that out there to see what others think.
I would support that. I think that, but I don't see why we wouldn't send our own letter. Even if the PCE does their own letter, I don't know if we all agree to it, that why we wouldn't send our own letter.
Well, part of the reason maybe is I don't know that our speakers, I think some of the facts have changed in this scenario. The PUC's come out with a recent ruling that has changed some things. So we need to understand that to make sure that we'd even have grounds to write a letter.
So PCE is still in the process of analyzing it, and they have a lot more expertise than we do on this. That's the challenge for us, is that, it's just not our area of expertise.
Okay, so, but PCE is doing all the legwork. If we could look at their data and their analysis, then we could bump. So you're saying no, we don't want to put it on the agenda, Councilmember Colson? I'm not following.
No, I'm asking how the best way to follow up. We are going to follow up with it with PCE. If there's a need to write a letter for the December 15th hearing, I'm sure they will. They would represent 21, the 21 cities and 20 cities and county. I don't want to write a letter that is not, I'm concerned if we write our own letter, we may not have the right data and information.
So the question is, what is the agenda item that you're proposing?
I'm just asking, how does the group want to follow up on it? And does it require an agenda item or not? Like, should there just, that's all I'm asking.
Okay, so we're going to defer to PCE and for them to write the letter and do the homework, then we could have a presentation to know what they did, but it wouldn't need to be an action item.
Could be on consent for sure.
Okay. Okay, so I would support that, just an information item, just to know what they did.
You have a couple of hands up, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I see them. I see Councilmember O'Brien.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be jumping to write the letter at this point. I would be interested to let, PCE do the legwork. That's their expertise. And then whether it's in a staff report or in a presentation, receive that information and then collaboratively then figure out, the best way to move forward. Is it, all cities are writing separate letters, or is it PCE and then all the cities, hop on to PCE's letter? But I'd rather at least have the facts first before jumping into a support letter at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Councilmember Beach.
Thanks. I would agree. I think defer to staff to work with PCE to figure out that approach. The other resource that I copied our city staff. The League of California Cities has an environmental staffer that may have another data point for staff to synthesize, whether or not just another perspective to see what their opinion on whether or not cities should weigh in. So I think that's another resource for staff to consider. And if it's worth it, we can consider a letter.
Very good. Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
I think this is where we've wound up, but I just want to speak in favor of a very simple agenda item so that we can discuss this. It doesn't have to have a letter attached to it. If we decided that on December 5th, that it would be good to write a support letter, we could authorize the mayor to write one in coordination with Councilmember Coulson if we want to endorse PCE. It's just to make sure that it's held on the agenda so that we can discuss it. I think that is useful.
Yeah, I think that we have pretty good consensus on that, the thought of having it on the agenda item. So I think okay, any other items, any other future agenda items? Councilmember or Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with respect to procurement, and I mentioned this earlier, and I very much appreciated Councilmember Coulson's comments. That's exactly what I had in mind too, that I think procurement has a number of different touches on a number of different potential policies. And so I'm asking simply that we have a session, whether it's a study session or it's an agenda item, where we can talk about this in advance of the city attorney trying to rewrite our rules so that he doesn't have to do it twice, kind of thing. So if there's a second for this, I would suggest that staff and the city attorney could figure out the right timing for that conversation. I don't think it's urgent, or it's as urgent as the city attorney wants to make the rewrite of the rules. So that's what I would like to suggest. And then I have one other item, but maybe I'll handle that one first.
Okay, do we have a second on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'll second it, especially in the context of the DEAI piece of it.
Right, exactly.
Very good. So we have it. And what was the next one, Michael?
So the second one is one that I think several of you have heard me say this, which is I feel that our city, as it evolves and grows, which is inevitable, has more and more traffic type issues. And I would find it helpful on council if the Traffic and Safety Commission could have weighed in on some of these items. Like we had one at the beginning of this evening. And I'm not here to say what's right and wrong. I'm just saying it would help me if the teaspoon met twice a month. That's where I'm going with this, because they only meet once a month. They very frequently miss out on timing of reports that come to council that they haven't been able to weigh in on. And I just think it would be helpful if they had more opportunities to weigh in on these initiatives, on to propose things. So I guess the agenda item I'm requesting is whether we could agendize talking about whether Teaspoon should meet twice a month. And maybe there's some months where you take it off or whatever, but just a greater frequency I would find helpful.
Okay, and do we have a second on that one? And my reluctance to do the second is I would like the members of the Teaspoon or staff to bring that to me before in other words, I don't know that there's a problem until somebody's kind of pointed it out. So I take your point, and I would be willing to support it if I had some other input from others that is necessary.
Well, if I may, and I'm not gonna push this hard or anything. The fact that so often, it hasn't been through Teaspoon before it comes to us, and then that gets raised as how come the bike ped plan, people didn't read this or didn't have a chance to react to this grant proposal or that one. I think it's hard to imagine the commissioners bringing this forward because it would seem presumptuous, and staff, I'm quite sure, feels they already have a lot to do, and managing 2 meetings a month is not probably something that's super exciting, which I get, but I would still find it helpful. I think that giving the public more chances to weigh in on bike proposals, traffic proposals, and so forth, pedestrian crossings, just would be good for us. And if it meant that the Teaspoon meetings didn't have to be as long because there were more of them, that'd be fine. I just think that these issues come up a lot and they only meet 12 times a year, not even.
Okay, so colleagues, one more time, any second on this one. And
can I ask a question? Just a question to City Attorney Gina. Just in general, if our planning commission, whether it's planning commission, park and rec, beautification, if commissions feel that their workload is getting in excess of the number of meetings, can they request to have additional meetings, or are they only allowed? So they could.
Or can staff request a special meeting for a special item?
So yes. So the commission can, ask for either a special meeting or they can ask the council to set to amend their calendar of regular meetings to add additional meetings. So there are ways that the commission can meet more frequently if they feel like they need it, or if staff feels like they need to bring items to their attention before their next regular meeting, we can always call a special meeting too.
Fair enough.
Okay, so knowing that, I guess I would just put, instead of having an agenda item and trying to determine that, I would just say, please inform the commissions that should their workload be getting in excess, they have the opportunity to have additional meetings should they
should there be a time sensitive item that they need to act on?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we will move on. Any other future agenda items, colleagues? And having none, then we have acknowledgements, the agenda packets and meeting minutes of the Planning Commission, Traffic Safety and Parking Commission, Beautification Commission, Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Library Board of Trustees are available online at www.burlingame.org. And for adjournment, do we have anybody we need to recognize for adjournment? And Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Well, Mr. Mayor, not least of all, in light of it being United Against Hate Week, if there were a Burlingamer to retire in memory of course, that should take priority. But if not, I'd like to suggest that we have a moment of silence for the 5 people killed in Colorado Springs in a hate crime, and to remember also the 2 individuals who wrestled the gunman to the ground and probably saved dozens of lives. A stark reminder of why United Against Hate Week is still an important time for all of us to reflect. And so I would make that suggestion, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, and that's a great suggestion. So if we could just have a moment of silence for the victims of the Colorado shooting. Thank you for that, and with that, we are adjourned. Good evening.
Good night.